I remember being angry all day long and thinking all day long, I want to hurt somebody if I'm going to snap. And it wasn't initially Ella. I thought about the babysitter. I thought about going down the street and seeing somebody I knew. And I thought about hurting a stranger. I don't remember exactly what point I decided it's going to be Ella.
Just so you know, this show is about scary stuff. So don't say I didn't warn you guys. And remember, don't be scared.
Episode number 40. Hereditary. Before I can tell you the story of Ella Bennett's life and death, I must present to you a concept. The concept of whether psychopathy/sociopathy can be inherited. Does the presence of a certain gene give someone a tendency toward being a psychopath? The very existence of such a gene is a controversial topic. But the so-called warrior gene does exist. Monoamine oxidase A is the human gene tasked with making a very specific protein. That protein is responsible for breaking down the chemical messengers that control thinking and behavior, mostly dopamine, noradrenaline, and serotonin. Each one is linked to mood, but even still, experts urge no rush to conclusion about what carrying that gene translates to in the real world, but they're thinking about it and wondering about it, possibly a bit frightened about it. According to Dr. Abigail Marsh of Georgetown University, psychopathic traits can now be identified as early as 2 years old. And then you hear a story interwoven with suspicions and accusations of murder throughout generations, and it makes you think about such a possibility a bit harder. Could a woman be suspected of murder, then have a grandson who commits and confesses to one? Charity Bennett's mother, Kyla, is such a woman. When Charity was 6 years old, her mother was accused of arranging a hit on her father. It was March 11th, 1980, and Charity's parents, Bob and Kyla Bennett, had only recently ended a period of estrangement by remarrying following their divorce. A mere 57 hours before Bob Bennett was found shot execution style in the foyer of their East Cobb County, Georgia home, the couple had exchanged vows in Las Vegas for the second time in their lives. It was Bob's 5th marriage and Kyla's 3rd. He had been shot in the head, heart, and 2 times in the back. Kyla said that when she told young Charity, her response was that she was just happy it had been her father and not Kyla. 1 month later, 29-year-old Kyla Bennett was arrested and charged with conspiracy to commit murder and was jailed. She wasn't accused of being the shooter, but a part-time employee of the Bennett's trucking company claimed Kyla had had him solicit someone for her husband's murder. He too was arrested. Allegedly, a tape exists with Kyla admitting she inquired about a hit only out of curiosity. A map on a napkin allegedly drawn by Kyla depicts the family's home and unlocked doors. The police report included statements from the arresting officers saying that Kyla appeared to be pretty calm and maybe even happy with herself. Bob and Kyla Bennett had divorced but attempted to continue to run their lucrative business together, Bennett Trucking Company, which had a contract with the U.S. Postal Service. Kyla claimed that Bob was too busy living a prosperous jet-set lifestyle while she worked and raised their daughter. She describes him vacationing with many girlfriends and perhaps never having shared a meal with Charity. After 6 weeks, Kyla was allowed to be released on bond after hiring a new attorney who convinced the judge she was experiencing psychological distress in jail. Her co-conspirator remained jailed, and the pair went to trial that June. After an 11-day trial and 7 hours of deliberation, Kyla was acquitted of the conspiracy charge. Everyone had difficulty trying to figure out why the pair had even remarried, but it was eventually concluded that it was a ploy by each to try and gain control of the company they were attempting to run together. Bob Bennett also wanted to regain custody of the Bennett home in which Kyla and Charity had been living. Everything pertaining to the Bennett's finances and company was in Kyla's name. She explained that it was because her husband had ties to the Georgia Mafia and was involved in, quote, illegality. While divorced, Bob Bennett had a fiancée for whom he leased a condo. She would say later that Bob told her that the lease was ending and that she needed to be out by March 12th. If she wasn't, she would be thrown out. He was going to remarry Kyla as a means to regain control of his business as well as his house. Kyla's parents cared for Charity while she was in custody, but she rejoined her mother upon her release. By the age of 12, they recall, Charity started running wild and soon became addicted to heroin. Bennett Trucking was returned to Kyla's full control after her acquittal for her husband's murder, and she continued to grow her business. She and Charity only butted heads like many mothers and teenage daughters do at some point. One wanted freedom, one wanted control, and those roles would switch. Kyla admits that she wanted to have her own life in addition to being a mother, although she knew Charity would rather she stay by her side and be devoted to her entirely. She said that whenever she tried to put Charity in line, she would throw the fact that she had murdered her father back into her mother's face. When Charity was 17, Kyla gave her daughter $100 and told her to move on, to either get help or overdose. She didn't care anymore. Charity ended up in Tennessee and was sober for about a year, enrolling in college and attempting to live a clean life. Then at 18, Charity was in despair and in the throes of coping with addiction. Barely an adult, she made a pact with herself. If her life was still in turmoil in 30 days, she would overdose and end her misery. But then, she says, her life was changed when she found out she was pregnant with her first child. Son Paris Lee Bennett was born on October 10, 1993. Charity says Paris's father left shortly into her pregnancy, only to turn up 2 years later, having been diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia. They didn't stay together. Though she adored her child, Charity noticed fairly early on in his life that he had serious behavioral issues. She says he threw tantrums and lied, but was also extremely quiet and at the same time extremely bright, with an eventual IQ of 142 when later tested. Soon, Charity met and married Jonathan Smith, and they settled in Alabama. Charity reluctantly admits that Paris was not happy when she married and during her pregnancy with her second child, Ella Lee Bennett, who was born when Paris was 9. That relationship was unsuccessful, and Charity and her kids relocated to Texas to stay with Kyla as she dealt with a recent breast cancer diagnosis. But then she reconciled with Jonathan and went back to Alabama. Her husband soon found himself in the hospital. He had a drinking problem and had gotten into an altercation with police and was shot. Charity decided to be a single parent. They went back to Texas. After Ella was born, the brother and sister adored each other as much as siblings can. Home videos show them playing nicely at first, but then the clips turn ominous as Paris inevitably gets too rough with Ella. Charity is often heard off camera chastising him for not being gentle. One clip of Ella being bathed in the kitchen sink features Paris's commentary.
Mom, what's your least favorite word?
My what?
Your least favorite word. Or sis.
I don't know.
Kill Charity's children?
Paris.
The kid's grandmother, Kyla Bennett, explained when interviewed that Paris was always different, not as social or affectionate as one would expect. She agreed with her daughter on one thing, that Paris did not like losing his position as center of the universe to a new baby. Many of the things Kyla says about Charity as a child, Charity and Kyla also say about Paris.
She was a good manipulator. But we all are. Paris is. Ella was. I would be lying to you if I said that I wasn't. We all manipulate each other. We're all spoiled rotten. My other daughter, Caitlin, I don't think she's quite as good. She didn't have as good a teacher because I don't do it so much anymore. I don't have a company to manipulate. I don't have drivers to manipulate. And I don't have a jury to manipulate. So...
When Paris was about 8 years old, he wrote a letter to Charity in which he stated he wanted to kill her. About 4 years later, Paris attempted to stab his mother Charity, resulting in his week-long stay at the psychiatric facility Red River Hospital. Charity ended up taking him home, even though she was told her son had homicidal tendencies and was obsessed with guns and killing. She didn't think they would be able to do anything for him and felt she was better equipped to deal with him at home. She says she has no regrets about removing him from treatment, regardless of what she was told. This incident occurred while the family was staying at Kyla's ranch in Seymour, Texas. After Paris had been in Red River Hospital for a few days, Charity felt like they were doing little for him and not communicating with her at all. She had her son discharged and relocated with her children to Abilene, Texas. Less than 6 months later, on February 4th, 2007, Charity Bennett went to her waitressing shift, leaving 13-year-old Paris and 4-year-old Ella at home with a babysitter. It was Super Bowl Sunday, and she had taken an extra shift at Buffalo Wild Wings in Abilene, Texas. The babysitter, a student at Hardin-Simmons University, took the kids to eat and brought them back and watched a movie with them, putting Ella to bed afterward while Paris went to finish homework. Around 10 p.m., she told police, Paris convinced her that she could go home early. By his own account, his next move was to retrieve a knife from the kitchen. At 11:42, a terrifying 911 call is made by Paris, telling authorities he accidentally killed someone, then clarifying that he knows he killed someone. He's talking about his tiny little sister Ella, who was vivacious and loved music, who loved butterflies and the color purple. Paris had convinced the babysitter she could leave and had calmly retrieved a knife from the kitchen, taking it into his sister's bedroom. He proceeded to beat her, strangle her, and ultimately stabbed her 17 times as she lay asleep in her bed. Semen was found in multiple places around the scene as well, adding a mysterious element of sexual deviancy to the crime. Paris then telephoned a friend, staying on the line with them for 6 minutes before ending the call. 2 minutes after that, Paris Lee Bennett calls for help. He is frantic on the 911 call, sobbing and attempting CPR on Ella while dispatch stayed on the line. You can hear him counting out chest compressions through his tears. He didn't want to do it, he said. He's certain his sister is dead, and that he can't even stay in there because there's too much blood. He told 911 and police that he was having a vivid hallucination. He saw his sister rise up in flames, possessed. And Charity says that she believed him for as long as she could until he told the actual truth. That he wasn't hallucinating, he killed his sister on purpose and out of revenge against Charity. Paris later told his mother that he wanted to kill someone and that he wanted to hurt her. At first, he thought about killing the babysitter. Then he thought about killing his mother